It's finally time for a new episode of The Mandalorian. Oh, it's over. Guess I must have blinked. Hello, interwebs! I'm here to review the latest episode of Star Wars The Mandalorian, Chapter 20, I believe we're on, The Foundling. And yeah, as my joke at the top there sort of indicated, I believe that this might actually be the shortest episode of the series. And if not the series, at the very least of the season, because this was an incredibly quick and fast episode. And I saw actually a couple people online sort of bemoaning the fact, like, oh, this means it's not going to be good, yada, yada, yada. And I am someone who does not think that the length of something is going to determine its quality by any means. You know, some of the shortest episodes of some TV shows I think are amazing and excellent, and some of the longest ones I think are absolutely horrible. And in fact, you know, I often see a shorter episode of a show, meaning that the, you know, creators behind it had, number one, confidence that they could tell a story in a short amount of time, and also probably too meant that it's shorter because they put so much into it. And you can definitely feel that in this episode with the visuals and the amount that they do with stuff in this, because this is jam-packed with a lot of amazing and crazy visuals that got my geek heart a-fluttering. But that being said, and this is especially more so coming off of what I think is probably the best episode of the series, which is kind of sad considering it's the episode that has nothing to do with sort of Din and our main characters at all, really. This episode I am much more mixed on, but not in the sense that I think it's a middling episode, but more in the sense that I have things in this episode that I adored. Like, again, my geek heart was a-fluttering, and things that I was just like, that is so incredibly dumb, and I could just feel how frustrated I was getting at how clear certain plot beats were happening just to get the plot moving along, that I was just really rolling my eyes at how silly it was. So let's kind of dig into the meat of all this, because I have a lot to say despite the fact that this episode is so short. Let's start on the positive end and say I adored all the stuff with Grogu at the beginning here. Like, we get to see all the training in the Mandalorians. I do wonder if that's what they do all day, just sitting there training and fighting all day. It kind of would fit them. They remind me of Klingons in a lot of in that sense. But like Grogu playing with the little rock alien monsters, and then Din being like such a dad and be like, oh, I'm gonna take him and he's gonna prove himself with the other kids. It's time to take him to play my favorite sport, the arrow sport. It was just like space paintball. I thought was just really cute, and I love Bo-Katan being like, look, he's just proud of you. He wants to show you off a little bit. But what I liked this moment getting to, besides just showcasing more of Din being a dad to Grogu, is starting to get to the philosophy more of this version of the Mandalorians, this sort of cult of Mandalorians. I think that runs throughout the entirety of the episode. We've gotten some of the philosophy of this group over previous seasons, mainly through Din and his small little moments with, like, the Forge Master lady that we see, but we haven't gotten a ton of time to sit down here, and I like we get little echoes of that. It's like, one does not speak unless they know something. I forget the exact phrasing, but just things like that to, like, get a little bit more of, like, what's behind all of their sort of, like, culty sort of Mandalorian vibes. And I thought that was a really cool way to showcase that. And not just to Grogu, but also to Bo-Katan, who I think spends a lot of this episode also starting to, as I kind of assumed at the end of last episode, starting to get maybe a little bit drawn into this version of Mandalorian, starting to feeling a sense of community and starting to get what they're about. And you can see that, again, she's not fully in on this, and there's stuff that, like, feels like she's distanced from, like the moment where they all sort of, like, separated to go eat by themselves was kind of a sad, lonely vibe, it felt like, despite the community that they were feeling. And yet she was also given a moment of honor by being able to sit by the fire, which I thought was a great little piece of, like, world building, where it's just like, yeah, in this thing where people, like, they take off their helmet in private to eat, you know, sitting by the fire would be a place of honor, and to get to stay warm as they were sort of like, as the rest of them had to go out in the cold and be by themselves. So I thought all of that was just a really cool, like, world building element that just showcased Bo-Katan getting more enamored, but also, like, seeing some of the you know, ups and downs of this group. And then also Grogu as well, getting, like, his next piece of armor, and it being from the community, not just his dad. I thought that was really cool. So all of that stuff I thought was really excellent. Where I started to get frustrated was the kidnapping of the Foundling by the monster creature. This is the second time in 4 episodes that we've seen a monster just come and nearly kill a bunch of Mandalorians for hanging out at this specific spot. And I think after a certain point, like, I get the Mandalorians, like, we fight everything, and so maybe they want to live on a little bit of a dangerous area and planet, but it's like, at a certain point, find somewhere better. This just does not seem like a good place for you to live if this is like your kids are getting kidnapped. And it was so clearly done to create like an action set piece that Bo-Katan can sort of be the leader of. And especially since we already started off the season with like a big creature attack at this specific spot, I thought that this was not only redundant, but a very, just forcing the plot to come along. And it was extremely, extremely frustrating. The thing that I'm thinking most people are going to be talking about with this episode, though, is going to be Grogu having a little PTSD flashback and seeing Order 66. And I also have mixed feelings on this, but they can the negative feelings that I feel about it can be mainly fixed. But let me just start with the positive, because on a visceral fan level, oh my god, was this so cool. I believe we've seen little bits and pieces of Order 66 in animated media like the Clone Wars, as well as video games like Jedi Fallen Order, and even little snippets of it in Obi-Wan with the backstory of the Inquisitor in that show. But this is, I think, the longest, most extended sequence of Order 66 that we've gotten since Revenge of the Sith. And Revenge of the Sith was a very disappointing look at that. I mean, as much as I love Anakin Skywalker killing children to showcase how fascist he is, it wasn't exactly the most, like, visually stunning, like, moment. You're like, oh yeah, Anakin killing all the Jedi. It's like, no, he's just gonna kill children because he's the most fascist, you see. So getting to actually see that moment, I thought was, and not just in a deleted scene, was really cool. And there's a reason that I have my Clone Trooper helmet, because, like, again, they're fascist soldiers, especially in this episode, but I do love seeing the clones in all of their glory. Forgive me that one indulgence into, I guess, in this case, like, a fascist aesthetic, but I'm just like, oh, look, it's the clones! It's the clones! They're cool. They may be killing Jedi and committing a genocide, but they're cool looking. I don't know. What do you want from me? I'm a terrible person. Anywho, sorry. Welcome to my weird childhood nostalgias, I guess. Bad Batch helps the clones a lot. Anywho, but all of that was really cool, and getting to see the escape of Grogu was awesome. And the only quibble I have in terms of the action set pieces there is the fact that we do get to see the top of the mountain that we saw last episode, the like surface, the highest peak in Coruscant. I didn't like seeing it there just because, yeah, it does tie the episodes together, but it just made the world of Coruscant seem small, because Coruscant is literally a planet-sized city, and yet everything seems to take place in, like, the area between the Senate building and the Jedi Temple. And I get that we focus on those areas a lot in the movies, and that makes sense to me. But the very fact that this, like, mountain on Coruscant is, like, right next to the Jedi Temple, I'm like, oh, that makes the world feel a little bit small to me. It's a little planet-sized city. One would think that peak would be on, like, the other side of the planet or something like that. You know? Give me a sense of scale of a city-sized planet. But that's small. I'm being nitpicky on that front. This is less of a nitpick, but it is a negative right now, but something that could be fixed as the series goes forward. And this is kind of an issue with last episode to a degree as well, is I'm unsure what the point of showcasing this Order 66 scene was, beyond just fan service. While it was really cool to see this moment happen on screen, I don't see what the point of it was. We knew that Grogu had been in Order 66. I think we'd seen like little flashes of that other way, so none of this was telling us anything that we didn't already know. Perhaps the only thing that it is telling us is the identity of the Jedi who saved Grogu. So maybe we will learn more about him and see more about him. But as it stands right now, this feels a little bit more fan servicey, and I don't know how it connects. Last episode has that problem too, in the sense that, like, I don't know necessarily where that story is going. But even that felt a little bit more pertinent because it was more world building of the New Republic, and I can see more clearly how that might eventually tie back into Din and our main characters. But this one less so. This one I'm less like, why do we need to see that? So I was a bit sort of on that in terms of its world building. As like a Star Wars nerd, I was like, oh, hell yeah, I'm here for this. But in terms of like storytelling, I was like, where are we going with this? So pick your poison on that front. But I also did like the action with the giant bird. We do have our stupid Mandalorian man kind of going in, like, oh, it's my son, I'm gonna go and try and rescue him moment, and it was, of course, getting in trouble and causing problems. The action looked good, but I always hate moments of that where, like, a character does something stupid just to instigate the plot. Again, a lot of stupid writing decisions in terms of just getting this, like, bird monster plot going. But the action itself was overall fun, and I do like that we get the little birds coming to the Mandalorians, like, little base now, because it probably means we're going to see one of the Mandalorians riding those things later on. I mean, it's just, as much as that show was not very great, it was kind of like the Chekhov's Rancor in Book of Boba Fett, you know? You don't give me a Rancor in one episode to not have me see it running around the city at the end of the season. Whether or not it'll be good payoff, who knows, but that's clearly where they're going with those bird monsters. So we'll see if that'll end up being cool. Because the Rancor, we remember the end of Book of Boba Fett. There's elements of Book of Boba Fett I like. That one was slightly less so. Anywho, the only other thing to mention is I did like seeing Bo-Katan asking for the Mythosaur on her armor, and I thought that was cool that she started bringing it up, and she's starting to feel these ties again back to her home and wants to sort of put it on her body and her armor. I thought that was a nice way to continue her character and to showcase her sort of connecting this kind of spiritual experience for her to even like this group that she's now a part of and her armor. So I thought that was a great connection throughout all of that. So that's kind of where I end this episode on. There are things that I really, really love, like seeing Order 66, the stuff with Din and Grogu being adorable, Bo-Katan getting moments to learn more about the philosophy of this group of Mandalorians, but it is offset on the complete opposite end of the spectrum by stuff that I found really, really dumb, such as the forced plot of the bird kidnapping the Foundling, the fact that I'm unsure how Order 66 stuff ties into the main plot, and then also the dumb action beat of the dad running in to try and save his kid. So it's one of those, like, I don't think there's anything that I thought was just like, okay. It's stuff that I really loved and stuff that I thought was stupid. So it's kind of a very binary feel on this one. But I'd love to hear what you think about this episode. Did you like this one more than I did? Do you think that some of the stuff I thought was negative was a good thing? I'd love to hear all of that stuff down in the comments below. Beyond that, I hope you're all doing well, my friends, and I hope you're taking care of yourself, and I hope you all, as always, live long and prosper, you adorable human beings.